This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Joining us today for a warm beverage. I never know how. Apparently I'm supposed to transition to say cup of coffee because not everyone drinks coffee. So we're still workshopping that. But these two gentlemen are going to help me figure that out. They're also going to help me talk about this fabulous new Disney Plus documentary, Music by John Williams. So I know story. I know mythology. I can certainly talk about that ad nauseum. But when it comes to music, I only know what I like. I couldn't explain it. I'm not a musician, but these two gentlemen absolutely are some of the very best, and they're very good friends of mine. First, returning guest from the Hyperion Hub and Los Angeles, California, Sean Degenhardt. Sean, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Dan. It is great to be here.
Great to have you. Now, this other gentleman that we have, he's been a friend of mine for a long time. He was in my wedding. He was one of the ushers at the wedding. He is the band director of our high school. They win countless awards. He is tireless in his love for students, education, and most important for this show, the music of John Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, happy to bring on Coffee with Kenobi, Mr. Jim Tallman. Jim, welcome to the show.
I made it on. Woohoo! Yeah.
A 19-year audition. A 19-year audition.
Woo!
Boy, every hoop I threw at you, you just jumped right through it, pal. Good to have you on.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So, obviously, music by John Williams. It's only been out a few weeks. It's an hour and 46 minutes long. Before we even talk about this overall, Jim, I'll start with you. When you hear the word John Williams, when you hear that name, what are some of the things that go through your mind?
You know, when I was in junior high, when we did like speeches on our heroes, and you get people like, most people did sports stuff. Dave Kingman was big back then with the Cubs, Roger Staubach, all those people. I did John Williams. I was that music nerd, and so I've been following him. When I think one of the people in the documentary talks about looking at the cover of the album and just listening to it. And that was me. And I was actually conducting my orchestra in my room over and over some of these themes. So it's such been an important part of me since really the early 80s, I started probably getting the records then. I knew I was familiar with it in the late 70s, but really started collecting it probably early 80s.
That's fabulous. Sean, what about you? When you hear the word John Williams, what do you think?
I see pictures, if that makes sense. Pictures of album covers, pictures of him, footage we've seen of him conducting various things like that. Just the impact he's had on my life. I won't say late 70s because that was a little too early for me, Jim. But definitely, I think Empire was the first Star Wars movie I saw in the theaters. And I remember, and we might have discussed this when you were on the Hyperion Hub with us just a few weeks ago, talking about having the 45 record for Star Wars.
Yes.
And sitting listening to the throne room scene and just crying because that music was so beautiful, so powerful. And I remember my parents walking by my room and seeing me, at age 6 or 7 or 8, just what's the matter? And I'm like, this music is so beautiful. But just, the emotional impact that it has and can have and continues to have.
When I hear that word, hear that name, I just feel like he was the person that I feel like, and we'll talk about this certainly in the show. He made me learn that there's some music that you can listen to over and over again that you want the record of, that doesn't have guitar and it doesn't have like some sort of catchy riff to it. It wasn't an earworm. It was an earworm in a separate way because it reminded you, it evoked those memories of these incredible things. And naturally for me, it started with Star Wars. When Jaws came out, I didn't see it because I was too young and I would have been scared, but I knew that music. And I think that's the thing about him. He's like the soundtrack of our lives. And I was trying to think of a name, gentlemen, to describe him, or not a name, but a word. It's a hyphenated word. I would say he's hyperbole proof. It's impossible to over exaggerate or overstate the impact that he has had. And actually, Jim, it's because of you that I got to first see him conduct. It was early on in my tenure, and you had taken a group of kids up to the Chicago Symphony, and Williams was conducting, and so I was fortunate enough to be one of the chaperones. And I have goosebumps now. The first thing he played was the Superman theme, and I cried because it was just so fabulous. Do you remember how many have you? I know you've seen him because you saw him with me, but was that the only time you'd seen him, or have you seen him other times too?
We took at least 3 trips up to see him in Chicago
Okay.
Symphony. 2 of them were primarily music, soundtracks. One was just a little bit, but it did a lot more of his concert pieces that they talk about in the
Mhm.
documentary. But yeah, at least 2 of them were wall to wall music from the movies we grew up with.
Was the one that I saw with you, was that the first time you saw him as well?
I thought
It's
maybe it
probably
was the
hard to
second
remember.
time.
It
Yeah,
could be. But do you remember your emotions when you first saw him walk out?
it was just amazing, after watching all those years of the Boston Pops, and then
Mhm.
there he is. He's right down there, and just in that with one of the world's best orchestras, just playing that music. And that orchestra hall is just the music's so alive in there, no matter where you sit. It kind of was like an out of body experience, just being right there and hearing it live and feeling it live.
Sean, you've seen him in Hollywood, right?
Yes, Clara, my oldest, who is
Yes.
a film composition major. We went out to Hollywood and saw him at the Hollywood Bowl with the LA Philharmonic. And that was my first and so far only time seeing him. And it was just magical. He only did the second half. The first half was still his music with Gustavo Dudamel conducting. But
Hmm.
I mean, that place even with 17,000 people in it was just electric.
I
And
bet the
Gustavo's no slouch either, really.
but
No.
now what he was in the documentary, right?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with him, or maybe I am. What are some of the things that he's done?
How long has he been the conductor of the LA Phil,
At least a
Jim?
decade, I think. He's
Yeah.
one of the big orchestral conductors of our time.
He's got a huge head of hair that loves to flop around while he's conducting, and he has done a lot for really making orchestral music interesting and engaging for younger kids. So I think that's one of his marks of success is just kind of bridging the generation gap.
And he goes
Okay.
to New York Phil in about a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
Oh,
leaving the
wow.
tenure there at LA and going to New York.
That's amazing. I thought he was very charismatic on the show, which I promise we're going to talk about. Besides seeing him in Chicago, one of the things I thought that was really neat that they did is they showed the opening sequence of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and they played the music live before that was kind of like a commonplace thing to go to a live orchestral presentation of a film where an orchestra would actually play the music. And he went through and he talked through it and he explained it. And it was like a film class. Blew my mind. Years later, at Star Wars Celebration, I got to be in the arena when he played his theme to Kenobi, the Disney Plus series. And it was the first time anyone had ever heard it publicly. And I got to watch him conduct it. Harrison came out, he played the Raiders March, he ended with the Imperial March. And then I saw him another time at D23. I was actually at the Rise of Skywalker premiere, and I just missed getting a chance to meet him. But that was okay. Just being around, just seeing him conduct was just fabulous. Which brings us to this documentary. I watched it. I didn't watch it the first of it. I watched it the first weekend, and there were a lot of things I learned about John Williams through this that I didn't know before. But before we get to what we learned, what are some things that stood out to both of you about this documentary that they just kind of encapsulated to you? Hey, this is what this guy's about. And Jim, we'll start with you.
Well, I mean, I'm not what this guy's about. I just think it added to all the background I've been studying for all these years about him. Especially I was not as familiar with the beginning from a little kid up through about the around time of Jaws when he starts really getting involved with the music. I was not familiar with the jazz side or his personal side or his first wife. So that really kind of gave a whole new picture how his music kind of progressed throughout with having the family and progressed further with his relationship with Spielberg and the other directors.
I was sort of hoping they would hit more on the stuff with George and Star Wars, and it really wasn't about that at all. But it's still very, very satisfying when they talked about Star Wars and the fact that there's actually a double album print of the soundtrack, which is almost unheard of at the time. Sean, are there certain things that stand out to you sort of immediately about the documentary that you just really thought, this is John Williams, this is why I love him?
Yeah, besides the music, I think just seeing people talk about him and his relationship with them and how genuinely nice he is and what a great guy he is, and that makes a huge difference in appreciating someone, not just for their talent, but just for who they are. I loved hearing about, I knew he had written some underscoring for Gilligan's Island, not the main theme, but a lot of the da 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 do 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 da do do do. So just knowing that, Johnny Williams had written that, 14, 15 years before Star Wars. Seeing Kate Capshaw's reaction to describing the first time she heard the Schindler's List theme. I think that is the big standout of the whole documentary for me.
That was very moving. And she got the emotion by that. I think what stood out to me about the documentary was he's such a genuine, no frills, just an authentic person who loves music. And he loves his process, which I thought was really fascinating. The fact that he would just pencil it out still and he didn't use anything. I mean, I'm sure now he has people helping him, but just writing that out there and the amount of time that must take. I had no idea that he was well known for jazz, and hearing George say, "Oh, you mean the jazz guy?" When Stephen had suggested using John Williams, and the fact that he was called Johnny Williams, and they keep showing all these films he did countless films before he was, the apple of everyone's collective eye, and the fact that was it his first wife, who said, "Hey, maybe you should call yourself John Williams. Johnny Williams sounds like a kid." Was that who said it, or was it one of the producers?
That was one of the
I
producers.
think it was
it
George or Steven, maybe.
I can't remember. But I was really thought that was cool that everyone kind of has their moment where they, Stan Lee, not the same thing, but he changed his name because he used it. He didn't use his full name. He just said Stan Lee because he used his full name for when he would write the Great American Novel, which never happened. So it's always about kind of like a persona that you take on. But I don't think John Williams has a persona. I think he's just John Williams, and that's really refreshing.
I think we saw that. Do you remember a few years ago, there was some clips of a little kid standing outside his home in California with, was it a trumpet? Maybe playing the Star Wars theme. And John Williams came out and talked to him. And I mean, that I think is just a great display of who he is.
I did not know that. What? Go ahead, Jim. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I think, have either of you heard his jazz stuff? Is it on Spotify or Apple Music? I'd love to hear it.
I went on YouTube to listen to a couple from that, Something in Rhythm, or the one they talked about, the album talked about in the documentary. And they had 2 arrangements on YouTube. Great. Just great.
What is it about? So they show it a little bit, but YouTube would be much better to understand sort of how this thing works. But when you're writing a score, when you're getting ready to compose and create this music, what is it about John Williams that makes his work stand out? Because there are a lot of composers, there are a lot of people who write film scores, but what is it about him that makes it unique?
I think with his background being a great pianist, a great jazz pianist, they have much more colorful chordal background, harmonic background, that when he's come to write for the music, his harmonic language is a lot more complex, or he has a bigger palette to choose from to write the music. I think if you hear a lot of his chords, they're not just the typical block chords. They'll have these either added extended harmonies or suspensions and such, and that just makes that kind of, for some of his music, the heroic John Williams sound. But it's not. I mean, if you look at other stuff too, he's like Catch Me If You Can, or the Terminal is a little bit different. Those are just kind of getting some little bit of jazz elements in there too. So I think that's a big portion of what gave him the background to write these wonderful chords in later music.
And jazz is much more of a sort of improvisational too. So is that kind of play into that as well?
I think so. It's the thing that was fascinating to me when you're talking about that. That scene where he pulls out a sketchbook of the 5 notes from Close Encounters and just like going through, well, this one had more of a question here. This one had ended the sentence. I thought that was incredible. I thought that was just really interesting that they sketch till they find that right sound.
Would you believe I've never seen that film?
I haven't either.
Really?
Yeah.
One of my favorite, I mean, they showed one of my favorite scenes of all of Spielberg is this when they're communicating with the spaceship. It's just this wide spot, and they play the 5 notes on this, and it's kind of seen visually as well in the background. Yeah. That's your assignment. That's your guys' assignment for this week.
Okay.
Go check that out.
Oh, I have no doubt. When it was playing at the Peoria Riverfront Museum, I didn't go, and I really regretted not checking it out. Sean, from your perspective, and you just did this incredible study of the score of Cinderella. So you very much are steeped in this too. What is it about John Williams that makes him so much different from other composers?
Up until that time, I don't think many film composers used an idea called leitmotif. And that was kind of popular in the romantic operas of the 1800s, where each character would have its own theme. So you were instantly, if you didn't see them on stage and you heard their theme, someone's talking about them or they're about to get killed in the next scene, things like that. So he brought that back, and that's where we get Luke's theme, Leia's theme, Han and Leia's theme, really associating the music with the characters on the screen, which is just not only a visual tie, but you have that aural tie as well. Just kind of encapsulates, pulls everything together.
When you say leitmotif, you already described it well. Even like Peter and the Wolf, that is leitmotifs, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly.
But for that, it was like a specific instrument would denote pun, the different characters. But for John Williams, it's like full on film. You've got the Force theme, as you mentioned. There are countless ones. So there's certain. Here's the question, guys. This is a hard one. Give me your favorite John Williams individual track and your favorite John Williams soundtrack. I can go first if you want to marinate, unless she springs to mind right away.
You're asking to choose your favorite child. That's that kind of question here, because there's just,
yes,
you cannot have depending on the day, what do you want? Do you want something that's contemplative like Saving Private Ryan? Do you want something exciting, heroic, and majestic like the Cowboys? It's just to make it choose one. How dare you, sir? How dare you?
Oh, I dare. And if it helps you to feel better, I'll let you change it whenever you want. Whenever you want. You have that autonomy, my friend. There are so many to choose from, and I think the individual track, I love them all. Well, I don't love them all. I don't know them all, but there are so many that I respond to. But my answer to both of these is not Star Wars related, which tends to surprise people. But my favorite individual John Williams track is the Superman theme. There's just something so magical, so heroic, so triumphant about that, in the way that it slowly builds, especially in the original soundtrack. We're in the film, it's that kid looking at that old comic book, and there's the curtains, and there's the slow introduction of the opening credits themselves, and then it just gets in that sweeping thing. The first time I ever went to California Adventure, I happened to be wearing a red t-shirt with the Superman logo on it. And it was my last day there, and I was really transfixed by that theme park. And I was walking down the back area where they have their animation tour. I can't remember the name of it right now. And all of a sudden the Superman theme came on. And I'm at a Disney park. And I was so taken that I ran down the street. And there were a few people there, but nobody's paying attention. And if they were, wouldn't that be great if that was on video? And I just jumped in the air. I didn't fly. That's spoiler. But I just was so moved. And I just thought, I love this so much. And when we were married, we got married, when they announced us at the reception, that was what I had played, because I was like, oh man, in my mind we're the super couple because it took me so long to find her. And it just really moved me. My favorite album of John Williams is the Raiders of the Lost Ark soundtrack. I just think there's not a dud in so much of his stuff, but I could listen to that 1,000 times, and it tells the story of the film. But they're just wonderful music. My favorite on that album is the truck chase. It's about 7 minutes long. Just fabulous stuff.
Okay. Can I do 2 or 3?
Yes, because I'm going to be doing 2 or 3. So.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
So, ultimate favorite, I would have to say the end credits from Revenge of the Sith, which kind of incorporates the throne room scene and end titles. When he gets to the very end, he kind of extends that little coda that he had used. And then ba ba da ba bum 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 bum, and there's that timpani bum 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 bum, and then it just goes to a snare roll before the final chord, and he holds that snare roll out just enough that you think he thinks this is the last time he's doing this. You know, this is his final punch before the final bump. And I just love that, because it's like, okay, how long is he going to hold that snare roll for before he gives us the final ending? So that. As far as a favorite album, I might go with Jurassic Park.
Oh, okay.
My Friend the Brachiosaur is one of the most beautiful melodies I think he's written. It is just so gorgeous, especially contrasted with the film and what's going on in the film. So that's another favorite. Let's see, there was one more. The key changes in the Raiders theme. Some of those key changes are just phenomenal. There's nothing fancy about them. It just happens exactly when you want it to happen and just lifts the energy up.
Can you explain that to someone who is an absolute neophyte when it comes to that? That would be me.
Okay, so Jim,
more of a Luddite. Probably more of a Luddite.
How about if you were looking at a picture and it had a picture of you that was painted and it had a light blue hue, and you looked at another picture of you, but it had a little more of a red hue. You know, it's still a picture of you, but there's a different feeling because of the different color. And for us, when we hear certain keys, they're kind of sometimes color to us. D majors sounds brighter and D flat major sounds warmer, kind of thing. So that's, you're shifting the color of the music. That's the way I kind of look at it.
I love that. No one's ever explained that to me. Thank you for that.
But Sean, that after the recap, when you hear the slow theme, Marion's theme in the middle of it, and it comes dum bum bum ba da dum ba dum, that is chills. That harmony's right there. Yes, that is so cool when it gets back to the recap.
And the end credits to E.T. I think is just, and you don't even need to know that's from E.T. That just brings you to tears. It's just so gorgeous.
Well, that whole the whole flight is just amazing.
All right, Jim.
Okay, I hope you got 20 minutes here.
We do. I mean, for you.
I'll go back to your thing about Superman. I direct this adult band, and when we had our tryouts, we had to do a half a concert, and one of the pieces I chose was the Superman thing, because that's what I started conducting in my room. And even was it the Krypton? Bum, 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 bum. Oh my gosh, I had the piano book and everything. So that's very special to me. And you mentioned E.T. One of my favorite tracks of all time is that piano solo, Over the Moon, where it's like you're in duple hand in your left and your right hand's in triplets. And John Williams just doing that is so beautiful. I'll do this for you for Star Wars, Dan. My favorite track, I mean, you can't go wrong with all the classics or anything like that, but I love Duel of the Fates. I love it, love it, love it. Just the few times that he's done stuff with choir. I mean, he did a piece on Empire of the Sun. Was it Solstate Justi or something like that? Hymn to the Fallen is so... it melts my heart, that last few minutes of Saving Private Ryan. So, but I guess, and then I mentioned Cowboys before. That's just another one to conduct. But I'll go with Sean, too, on Jurassic Park, conducting that too. It sounds simple, but boy, is it hard from a range and just those first 4 notes. The horn, bum, 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 bum. That's kind of tough on the spot. Then they do it again, half the volume, bum, 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 bum. And then again, it leads into it. But, those trumpets on bum, 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 that's so high. And to get in tune, wow, it's just, it's really cool, majestic. It's awesome.
I'm always scared to death for that horn player because,
Yes.
no pressure at all with that. Is it a minor ninth leap or something? Da, 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 da. And if you don't hit that note, it's all over.
Yeah. Oh, I do. The one piece I do love to conduct too, not the considered his greatest movie, but so much fun. The March from 1941. I think they used that actually in somewhere in the documentary a little bit there when they were going back to the old scenes. Yeah. So
I've not seen that. I know it's got a great cast.
And you just reminded me, the Olympic theme.
Yes.
That's one of my favorites to conduct. It's
which one? The first one or the Summon the Heroes?
No, the first one.
Olympic, yeah.
I mean, they're all great, but yeah, the fanfare and theme is amazing.
And I had no idea he did the theme for Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
That blew me away. I didn't know that.
I think at our concert we went to, Dan, he did the mission theme from NBC. I think he did that. Yeah.
Yes. There's some actually on the IndieCast, the Indiana Jones podcast. I did a review of that concert. I mean, I should go back and listen to that because I think I walked through everything that he played. That was a ton of fun.
And then there's the Home Alone stuff.
Yes.
Oh, his closest stuff for holiday because he doesn't have a Christmas album.
Right. Beautiful, beautiful melodies in there. The Star of Bethlehem.
Yeah.
The Somewhere in My Memory, and then of course, the airport, kind of the Nutcracker takeoff.
Did you do that at that concert a couple years ago that you conducted?
We did some of that, yeah.
Yeah, we did a little bit of same thing, a different arrangement of that, but yeah.
Now we haven't talked about the Harry Potter stuff. I think his Harry Potter theme is gorgeous, but I didn't realize he did the first 3. I knew he did the first 2, but I know he did the first 3.
Yeah, I didn't know he did the third one. I knew he did the first 2. I thought someone else had done the.
So did I.
Yeah.
Unless I misheard. Maybe we both. I don't know.
Yeah.
Only there was a way to access information at the push of a button. Yeah.
But again, those themes, Hedwig's theme, and I mean, even the theme, just for Hogwarts itself, walking in to the school, just so gorgeous and memorable and stick with you longer than the film does.
And just, he wrote the one theme before seeing any film. Just the Hedwig. Oh, wow. That's awesome.
He just gets this. I mean, you both have created your own music. What must that be like? I mean, obviously you haven't walked in John Williams' shoes. Would have been an amazing thing to do, but you just kind of picture an idea. Do notes kind of pop into your head first, or how does that even work? Again, I don't know anything about music except how to find it on Spotify.
I will kind of sit at a piano sometimes and just play through a few things, and then I'll record myself, and then I'll just keep certain things, and I'll go back. Okay, that works. That doesn't work. Some people, he sketches it out. I'll kind of just record it, and I'll go back. Oh, that seemed to be better, and I'll connect that with something else, and connect it with something else. That seems to work for me, Sean.
And there are certain, maybe call them tools in the toolbox that, if you're writing something for Schindler's List, you're going to know you're going to be doing a lot of Eastern European style harmonies, probably minor key type things. If you're doing something magical and, a lot of fantasy, raising the 4th scale degree gives you that little bit of magic. So there's tools they can use, and you just kind of play around with those.
What does that mean, raising the 4th scale degree?
So you've got your do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So fa is your 4th. So if you raise that a half step, do, re, mi, fa, is that right, Jim?
Yes, 4th.
Yeah.
Scale.
So you just kind of raise that 4th scale. It just gives it a little bit of a magical, unsettling kind of feeling. And he uses that a lot in, various places throughout all his films.
Dan, have you heard of like major key and minor key?
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually 6 mainly, but 7th is a theoretical one, but the different types of combinations of whole step and half steps. And then you can go into either further. So each one makes just a little bit different sound than the other.
Okay. Interesting. Well, you mentioned, I'm going back a little bit, but you had mentioned the throne room sequence. Jim, do you remember at my wedding the music that we left the church
Yes.
to? Yeah. Do you kind of remember how that played out? I mean, you don't. I don't expect you to. I just think it's a funny story.
Go ahead.
Well, so we were trying. When you're planning a wedding, as you both know, and many of you listening know, there's a lot of stuff that is involved. There's a lot of detail that is involved, and we were trying to come up with some music to just kind of set the stage. After you may kiss the bride, walk out there. We didn't want to find something that you always heard, and we just wanted to find something that would just kind of hit that right tone for us. And so I had my phone up, and I said, and I thought, oh, why don't I try? What's the worst that's going to happen? She already said yes. She's not going to cancel the wedding next week. So I said, what about this? And I play the throne room from the end of Star Wars, the original Star Wars. And she looked at me and she goes, is that Star Wars? And I said, yeah. And she goes, that's really beautiful. Let's do that. And I was like, yes, it was awesome. So they say, fast forward to the wedding, you may kiss the bride. And I know I told the story on the show before. And we turn to walk down the aisle, and the pianist starts playing into the throne room, and everyone recognizes it. And that church laughed. And then they clapped, and I saw a lot of tears because I think people knew how much that meant to me and what a amazing person Deanna must be to put up with me already that first day of our marriage together. It was so cool. And every time I hear that, it just takes on a whole different meaning for me. Do either of you have songs that you hear from John Williams that is not about a movie for you? It's just about a moment in your life that is enhanced because of that music.
Let me say that we also, our recessional, I arranged our music for string quartet, and our recessional, we got married at Christmas time. So the recessional started with the fanfare from the throne room scene.
No way.
Yes. And then that went right into Joy to the World because we got married at Christmas time. And then we had a little tag of White Christmas at the very end. But yeah, also that opening fanfare for a wedding recessional is great.
That sounds magical. Jim, is there a certain song that does that for you? Or track?
Not, I mean, so many. There's nothing that has a specific visceral image or something like that.
Even the story of you like conducting Superman, with the adult band that you have, or I mean, there may be moments like that. And in watching you, I've never had the good fortune to watch Sean conduct, but I've seen you conduct plenty of times, and it is just absolutely fabulous because you are just living and feeling that music. Was there ever a time when you're conducting something besides the Superman March, or maybe it was just that, where you're just really in? You just felt like you were a part of something special?
I think conducting Jurassic Park, that was one thing. Kind of a sad one. We just finished rehearsing for our next concert. We were doing this medley from his soundtrack of Far and Away. And the concert was literally just a few days away, and boom, we shut down. We were thinking for a couple weeks for this COVID thing, and never got to do that on the concert. So we worked a long time because it's a Ron Howard film, and that's a nice. It's a really different soundtrack for him, but it's so cool. So when I would think of that, I think of just that time of being so close.
That makes sense.
Binary Sunset.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
There is so much hope and longing in that simple little horn line with that paired with the visuals, that I think that kind of just sums up Luke perfectly at that time in his life.
Perfect.
One of the hardest ones I conducted was Shark Cage Fugue and Out to Sea from Jaws.
Wow. Yes.
It's so awesome, but it is tough. It was really tough for us.
I remember when The Force Awakens came out, and you were talking to me about I can't remember the title of the track, but it's The Resistance.
March of the Resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you were telling me about it was you were telling me how much you liked that one.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, that's a cool piece too. Ray's theme, beautiful.
Gorgeous.
There's a lot of good music from that. It's great to have him come back into the Star Wars universe again for that and to do that soundtrack.
As
Well, and I
much as
thought it
I
was
dislike The Rise of Skywalker, I think that The Rise of Skywalker is maybe his best score from that new trilogy.
I think it was special how he was talking about, there were some films that he was fine to not revisit, but for things like Indy and Star Wars, he was just very protective of
Yeah, I
his
love that.
babies and did not want to release them to anybody else.
Well, I really want to get to your experiences that you just had for that incredible Sherman Brothers tribute. But before we get to that, is there anything else you want to say about this documentary or John Williams that we have not covered? Either of you.
If you've not
It's too
seen
short.
it, run, don't walk.
Yeah, it was too short. It was great. It was great.
I loved it, and it was really one of my favorite expressions is, if you're the smartest man in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I am glad I am in this room with you two, because I have learned so much about music, and having the good fortune to see you both explain it to me. I know it means a lot to me. I'm sure our listeners will love it too. So thank you both so much for that. Truly. Really awesome stuff. Now, Sean, speaking of awesome stuff, I'm assuming the statute is over with all of the restraining orders that everyone has placed on you after you were in Hollywood.
Just John Alois.
Just John Alois. Okay, well, that's probably not the worst thing that could have happened. Tell us about what you got to experience, what happened. Just bring us through the whole thing. We're like we're in your pocket.
Yeah, so for the past 6 or 7 years, I've become more acquainted with the Sherman Brothers family. They, of course, wrote the scores for Mary Poppins and Jungle Book and Winnie the Pooh and It's a Small World and all those Disney classics, Charlotte's Web, non-Disney film, and did a little bit of work for a musical they premiered in LA back in 2017. Richard just passed away this past May at age 94, 95, I think. And the family, along with the Disney company, produced a concert event called A Great Big Beautiful Tribute to Richard, kind of a take on Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow that they wrote for the Carousel of Progress. I was asked to write a few arrangements. I think I did 4 or 5 of the 35 songs that were included in that. So did the arrangements and orchestrations here, and then was able to go out and attend the concert. And he said, the music director told me, well, if you're going to be here, I want to use you. So I ended up being kind of the rehearsal accompanist throughout the day, rehearsing with the singers before they'd go up on the stage and, do their final sound check. And it was quite a trip.
I think you're underselling it because, I mean, it's amazing. The pictures and everything. When you first found out you were going to get to work on some of the music for this, how did you feel? Like, what was that like? It must have been a lifelong dream for you.
Yes, definitely. A huge honor. Just to, be able to say that some of them are my friends and to get to work with them, and just to think of the impact the Sherman Brothers have had, over the last 60 plus years with songs that are all part of our childhoods. It's the soundtrack of our lives, really. So to be able to work on some of these songs, one of the songs I arranged was a medley of Age of Not Believing from Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and then Mother Earth and Father Time from Charlotte's Web, which is one of my second most favorite Sherman Brothers song. So that was a real treat. Yeah, just a beautiful score. So just to get to work with these people was incredible. Get to hear the music in this beautiful theater that the Shermans spent a lot of time in with world-class musicians and some of the celebrities that were there participating. It was really exciting.
So when you were going to rehearse, was there ever a moment where you're like, I forgot how to play piano? Were you nervous?
Was not nervous really until I had been upstairs, seeing how things were going. And as I was heading back downstairs, the lady that was at the stage door entrance is like, "Oh, Sean, we need you. And this is Josh and this is Jim, and they want to run through their stuff." And that was Josh Gad, who of course is the voice of Olaf, and then Jim Cummings, who of course we know from Star Wars and other Disney features, probably most notable as the voice of Tigger and Pooh. So to have Olaf and Tigger and Pooh on either side of me at the piano while I was playing for them was a thrill. And then Jim wanted to run A Wonderful Thing About Tiggers and I'm Just a Little Black Rain Cloud.
Oh my
So to
gosh.
play for him and to hear him singing this, there's Winnie the Pooh singing as I'm playing for him. I mean, there were definite tears happening during that part.
That gets me choked up. That's just talk
it
about
was
a dream.
so cool.
It's like shooting free throws with Michael Jordan. I mean, that's seriously that's incredible. Now, did you get the sense? Did you fanboy out at all? Or were you?
I tried not to. I took some pictures.
Good. Yeah.
And a lot of the other singers that were there too were maybe some studio musicians and contract singers and things like that live out there, but they were also, taking a lot of pictures and talking to people. So I tried to control myself. Hopefully it wasn't too embarrassing.
And then Josh and Jim were super cool. Did you get to like small talk with them at all?
Just a little bit here and there. Josh Gad said, "Hey, can you warm me up?" So I got to, warm up his voice at the piano. Jody Benson was there. She was a delight.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Haley Mills was wonderful. I had met
your
her at
your old
D23.
friend. Did she remember you?
Yeah, she did. At least she pretended very well to remember me.
Right.
When I said we had met at D23. Michael Feinstein, he sort of emceed the whole concert. Mr. American Songbook, he was great. Mark Shaman flew out. He's the composer for Mary Poppins Returns, wrote the music for Hairspray, Bette Midler's music director for quite a while, I think. So just seeing these people, and more importantly, sharing their love for Richard and Robert Sherman and the impact that they had on their lives and their careers.
So easily, that must have been an absolute highlight because you got it. It was a world colliding moment because it's your love of Disney and music and just composing. It must have been just a glorious top 5 highlight.
It definitely was top 3, maybe. I almost wish it didn't go by so fast because we were literally rehearsing 11:30 until about 6:30, and then the doors opened and it was time for the concert, and then it was all over 3 hours later. So it went by super quick. I wish I had been able to take some more pictures and do a little more small talk.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
I appreciate you sharing that very much. It's just so magical. And you also talk about your new book.
So this has been a years-long project, but I just released a study score from the 1950 Disney film Cinderella. So I took the original manuscripts that were written by the composers and the orchestrators, got them all into the computer so they looked like printed sheet music like you'd buy in the store, and prepared a study edition where people can see how these harmonies were arranged and how they wrote for the strings and what effects they used in the percussion for various things. And so it's the complete score for the film, from start to finish, every song, every underscoring cue, in addition to a lot of songs that were cut from the film. We included some of those. There were a series of maybe 5 or 6 songs written 10 years prior by a different songwriting team. And so those songs are included, as well as some illustrations from the Animation Research Library, photographs of composers, historical essays that were written by Disney author J.B. Kaufman. And then Don Hahn, the producer for Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, wrote a foreword for the book.
Wow.
So, just released this week.
Congratulations to you, my friend.
Thank you.
That is absolutely amazing. So are you allowed to share if there's anything else coming in the future?
An agreement is currently being prepared for my next project. So that's all I can say for now.
That's what we in the business call a tease. And that's great stuff. Well, you two are not a tease. You two did not disappoint. Absolutely tremendous. Again, talking with the both of you. Sean, thank you as always for being on the show and for helping teach us about music and the wonder of John Williams. And definitely thank you for sharing your story about your amazing experiences, and congratulations on all of your success. Please let us know where we can listen to you.
Yeah, you can search for the Hyperion Hub anywhere you can find your podcasts. And then you can find more information about the Cinderella score at digandheartmusic.com.
Perfect. And Jim, seriously, what a shame on me for taking so long. I can honestly tell you what I always thought. Well, if ever there's going to be music, I got to have Jim on.
I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great. It was great to have you. And if people have any questions for you, should I just have them send them my way, and then I'll just run around that building and try to find you?
Am I on weekly now? Is that what we agreed to?
I thought you were taking over the show. Coffee with Kenobi with Jim Tallman.
Reach me through you, and we'll get hooked up then. Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Sean, for including me in. It was a lot of fun.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.